So, well, good morning, everybody. We've got quite the conversation to talk about today. We're excited. There is a whole lot of people getting very holy out there right now, dealing with the COVID vaccine, and that's what we're going to talk about today: how to handle religious exemptions and the vaccine, and what we think as well. This is one of the few ones that we're going to talk about what we think.
Yes. And we're going to talk about what you should do, which may or may not be the same thing, because we recognize that humans can have a whole range of views on things, but our jobs as HR professionals, our jobs are to support the company, and that means being in compliance with all regulation, federal, state, local, all of that. So it's okay to disagree with what that regulation is, but it's not okay to just go ahead and do your own thing because you disagree.
Right. Exactly.
So that is our upfront warning.
Exactly. So listen, if you guys could do us a huge favor, this is a hot topic for a lot of people that are in your position. Hit that plus symbol down below, and please invite people in, your peers, to come in and find this, because they are desperately looking for this information. And we've got some good juicy stuff. I actually also have some updates on government contracting as well, because that's a whole nother level of ick.
Yes, a whole nother level of ick is accurate.
Ick and ew.
Ick and ew, that's where we are right now. And it is unpleasant, regardless of what your opinion is on this subject. It is unpleasant.
It is.
But here's the thing, right now in the United States, for a lot of businesses, for all government contractors, there is a vaccine mandate. And then theoretically, there's going to be an emergency temporary standard issued. The White House keeps saying any day now, and I keep believing them because I'm dumb. Surely as I say that, they'll send it out while we're discussing.
Teach you.
Teach me. I follow a Twitter account that just purely says every day that the update has but the ETS has not been issued. But anyway, it's an awesome Twitter account. So when that comes out, then we will see what the rules are for companies larger than 100 people. Whatever those rules are, it's going to involve more vaccines, and it's going to involve some religious vaccine exemption requests. And also, regardless of whether you're subject to the federal contractor rules or not, you can decide as a business that you want to mandate vaccines for your people, even if you only have 5 employees, unless you're in a state that has banned that. And that's going to be also one of the big icks that are happening when that is going to come into conflict with the emergency temporary standard. How people are going to battle that, but neither Brenda nor I are lawyers, and even if we were, we couldn't guess because we haven't seen what the ETS says, because nobody has seen what it said. Except for these mystical OSHA employees.
We are.
I'm not sure they exist.
Clueless. And we're happy to admit that we're clueless at this point when it comes to that. It's just one of those things, you know. We're just trudging through it just like everybody else. So
that's right. And we will, in our various forums, keep you up to date as soon as it comes out. I will be writing about it. I will be sharing it in my Facebook group, which is Evil HR Lady. I will be tweeting it. It will be on my website, which is evilhrlady.org. It'll be all over. But until that happens, I can't tell you.
Oh, and you know what? And I'll be sharing what she's writing in my group. So, because I don't have to do half the work, which is great. No, And it
Well,
actually,
to be fair, I have a lot of employment lawyer friends who will do the bulk of the work, and then I'll just make it sound nice.
Don't you giving out trade secrets there?
I mean, I will do all of the work.
Yeah, there you go. Well, and then I have a group called the Next Gen Women in HR Facebook group. We exchange a lot of information as well. But if you are here, honestly, we want to let you know that we're gonna give you an update too on what's going on with the government contracting side of things. So that's a wheelhouse that I play in. Suzanne actually sat in on a course that we delivered. Steve and I delivered, and we actually have that course now up online. That's available.
It's a fantastic course. Absolutely a great course.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it was. I learned a lot, and a lot of it I didn't like, but I learned it anyway.
Yeah, it's all right. We don't like a lot of it either. So,
let's get to God right now.
Yeah, you want to go ahead and kick off?
Sure. So with the federal mandate for contractors, and then of course with individual businesses mandating this as well, and then the upcoming ETS, we have a lot of people who have suddenly found God and are now declaring that they have a sincere religious belief. And the problem is that there are many people out there who do have a sincere religious objection to vaccines. It's the weeding out who is jumping on the bandwagon because they don't want to be vaccinated versus those people that have had this sincere religious belief. And it can be a difficult thing because we're allowed to push back on a religious exemption, to ask questions. When somebody comes with a medical exemption, we in HR don't ask questions. We just hand them paperwork and say, take this to your doctor. And then once the doctor says yay or nay, then we talk about a solution, right? With religion, we don't send you back to your priest to give you a letter because that's not required. You don't have to belong to an organized religion that declares that they don't believe in vaccines. And not only that, you can belong to an organized religion that has specifically said they're in favor of vaccines, and you can still have a sincerely held religious belief. And if that's not confusing, well, then maybe you should.
There's mother's milk. What are you gonna do, right?
What are you gonna do? But that's the deal. And fortunately, our friends at the Safer Federal Workforce website, which is a website put together for government contractors, to run by the federal government. It's a .gov site. Has given a sample form for your employees to fill out. And of course, you can change it to fit your business needs, but it's a good template. And they have a bunch of questions on there that you can ask. And I thought maybe we could talk about some of these questions, if that's okay with you, Brenda.
No, I don't have a problem with that at all. And you said you got this where again? It's
from the Safer Federal Workforce website, and that's a .gov site. It's an official federal government website. It's geared towards government contractors, but you can adapt it to any business. So their first question that they ask is, please describe the nature of your objection to the COVID-19 vaccination requirement. And that's just a good, broad, general question. And then the second is, would complying with the COVID-19 vaccination requirement substantially burden your religious exercise? If so, please explain how. And these are really good questions at getting the employee to think and to write it out. And the number 3 question is actually the one I find most interesting, is how long have you held the religious belief underlying your objection? Now, of course, we can't tell if people are lying or not, but if they're like 6 months, I'm not gonna be really that hip on believing them. But if it's like 12 years, that's a really different thing that you're dealing with. So I think that's a good question. And then their next question is, please describe whether as an adult you have received any vaccines against any other diseases, such as the flu vaccine or tetanus vaccine? And if so, what vaccine you most recently received and when to the best of your recollection? So again, it's really getting into where's your objection to this? Is it vaccines? And the next question is, if it's don't have an objection to all vaccines, then why this vaccine? So it's really digging down and making the employee come up with a solid reason for why they should face exemptions to this. Then 2 more questions. Is there any other medicine or product that you do not use because of the religious belief underlying your objection? Please identify them. And please provide any additional information that you think may be helpful in reviewing your request. And so these questions, I think, are a really good way to get that information. And what I like to see people do is ask the same questions of everybody, and then have the forms anonymized so the person's name isn't on them, and have an expert, either your HR person or your employment attorney, review them without the names on it. So you're not swayed by, oh, well, this is our star salesperson, we can't lose him. Or, oh, this is just a night shift worker making $12 an hour, who cares? That it doesn't say that on the form, what's your job, blah, blah, blah. But because we're not talking about that. We're not talking about accommodations at this point. We're talking about, is this a sincerely held belief?
Absolutely. And I would love to get a copy of that form too, by the way, because I have not seen that. And I'm not clear if that's specifically for government contractors or for federal employees, because that that website is actually for both. There's just an element in it for federal contractors. But nonetheless,
either way, it's something you can adopt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they're great questions.
Yeah, they're fantastic questions. And I think that gives you guys a really great roadmap on what it is that you need to do.
Right. And it's an example of how you can push back a little bit, because it's not just a matter of your employee coming to you and saying, I believe that I believe that vaccines are bad and my religion's beliefs say that I shouldn't get them.
Right.
Okay. Now let's push back.
Yeah. Well,
tell me a little bit about this.
And I want to be clear too. So I want to throw something out there just from my experience in government contracting. And that is that when we say push back, we're not saying don't go out there and say no. What we're saying is that you don't have to accept a yes right away. This pushback, as we're defining it, as Suzanne is talking through it, really is more about sitting down. It's almost like an interactive process, like what we see in the American with Disabilities Act. So yes, you can push back. You don't have to instantly grant it. You can ask probing questions, because likely you're going to want to employ the assistance of a employment attorney. And to be honest with you, this is uncharted territory for everybody. And I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to start seeing cases of employers starting to take this to the mattresses, right? So just because of volume.
Absolutely. And I think this is really a time where making use of your employment attorney is a really great idea. Because again, the employment attorney isn't going to be swayed by, popularity or whatever, especially if you send the forms anonymized and have the employment attorney make those decisions. Is it guaranteed that your employment attorney's decision is going to be the correct one and you won't lose in court? Of course not. There are no guarantees when it comes to employment law, except for you will eventually get busted if you violate FLSA.
I know, it's hard to say. It's hilarious.
But otherwise, this is a really good use. And people say, oh gosh, it's so expensive to hire my employment attorney to do this. You know what's even more expensive? A lawsuit.
Hiring to defend them.
Exactly. It's always cheaper to ask first. And right now, as I said, I'm friends with lots of employment attorneys. This is their whole day, every day. Right now is doing these religious exemption things. They are up to date. They know your state regulations. They know federal regulations. They've helped 43 other companies make these decisions. they're the experts right now. And I would absolutely say it's worth your money to have them do it at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to shake this up just a little bit. I know we're talking about government contractors. And if anybody is here on Clubhouse with us right now with government contractors, or anybody who's watching this video as a replay, there was an analysis that was actually put out by Shepard Mullen. And it is a literally 20-page analysis of the executive order that came out. Now, the other piece I actually do want to put some information out that if your company is currently listed with the Federal Register, and again, this whole session is not about government contractors, but this impacts government contracting, and it impacts the ability to provide services to the government, which also limits your ability to employ people so that you can get more business, right? Because the government is it's the largest customer on the planet, literally. And so this is actually a current thing, and it's a real thing. So they did this really fantastic analysis. The executive order the number was actually never published on the White House announcement. And ultimately what people were saying was that this isn't an executive order, it's a press release. Well, no, it isn't. It's executive order number 14042. And it's an actual real, it's a real thing. So don't listen to TikTok on this one, because I've seen it.
What? We're not supposed to get our news on TikTok?
I know, right? So I have seen it. So we don't want to go down that road. That's a bad thing. So, but there's something that they did write in this analysis that, to be honest with you, carries into the private sector as well. Okay. So I just want to share this with you because this whole subject is a lot of back and forth. And I love what Suzanne is putting out there, because she's talking about how do you engage with the employee. So there's two elements. There's the in-depth knowledge as to understanding what you should and shouldn't do, what you can and can't do, which, to be honest with you, is not as in-depth because it's not very deep. And then the other piece of it is how, just the knowledge piece of it, right? So I actually just double stated myself twice. So that works. Great. Yay.
Good job.
You like that? It was like the opposite of repetitive redundancy. All right. So in this analysis, it's called "What is a reasonable accommodation for employees with a sincerely held religious belief?" And I quote, "If an employee seeks an accommodation due to a sincerely held religious belief," not guaranteed, keep in mind, these guys are employment attorneys, Title VII requires an employer to engage in an interactive process to determine what reasonable accommodation may be available, right? So again, it's not a quick laydown, right? In some cases, it may be that an employee can telework if they do not need to be on site with a customer. Now, with government contractors, that is not the case. The guidance that is put out by the OMB is very, very specific. That does not necessarily include private sector, right, that we're talking about here, but it would exclude it if you had more than 100 people. But yet we're still waiting for information on that, right? So that could be an accommodation. In some cases, if an employee's position requires them to be on site with a federal agency, the accommodation may be an unpaid leave of absence. Read that one clearly again. If an employee's position requires them to be with a federal agency, the accommodation may be an unpaid leave of absence, which basically means you're employed, not working, not getting paid. But they haven't fired you.
I do not like this one bit, no. But my employment lawyer friends love it.
Yeah. Well,
and I think it is being challenged in court already, because it sounds to me like a firing in everything but name, especially since we don't have an end date for when these restrictions will end. So I don't like it. But as Brenda said, that is what the lawyers are telling us is a legit thing. And this is for someone that has a legitimate religious exemption. This is not just for someone that doesn't have any legitimate reason. They're saying, okay, for medical or religious beliefs, we can't give you a reasonable accommodation that will allow you to work. So that's you on leave of absence until some unknown time. And you do need to say, if you're going to put people on that, what that unknown time is. You don't have to say till, April, but you need to say until the restrictions are lifted, or until the CDC declares the pandemic over, or until blah, 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 whatever that is. Consult with your employment attorney. But I don't like it at all.
No.
Like
Now here's the last piece of this. And this is the key takeaway out of everything, which I absolutely love. The most important reminder is that there is not a one-size-fits-all formula for determining a reasonable accommodation, and such decisions must be made on an individual case-by-case basis. You can't apply the same solution to everybody. You actually have to be very deliberate and intentional and think through these things. It'll get easier the more you go through it, right? Just because you'll have more experience with it. But if you handle everything like all the same, it's like, well, we did this with Bubba, now we got to do it with Joe. It's like, well, Bubba and Joe are two different people with two different, extenuating circumstances. How are we going to account for that? So,
right.
Yeah.
And all of these things are very fact specific.
Yes.
What your job is, if you are working on site and you're some sort of rocket scientist that has to actually touch shuttle parts or whatever they do at NASA these days, I don't even know. You've got to be on site, right? There's just no way around it because you're supposed to be touching these things. But if you're an accountant, you can work from home, so we don't just have one big overview. I mean, I don't know, maybe all accountants can't work from home. I just have stereotypes about accountants.
Well, not in government contracting, because in government contracting, doesn't matter if you're an accountant, not on a contract, you are required to get vaccinated. You can't even work from home. So, and there's a reason why we're talking about government contracting specifically. And Suzanne heard a lot of this when she went through the course that Steve and I put on together. And that is that in my number one live and die rule when it comes to government contracting is that the same body of government that tells you that you need to follow a law is the same body of government that's going to put you in a position to violate it. Now, government contracting is also used as a vehicle to make changes into the private sector as well, because there's public employment law, private employment law, and then government contracting stuff. There's a lot of overlay, right? But we've already seen this. We saw this back in the day with 2 administrations ago, and they back in 2015 came out with an executive order about having employers produce pay data to the EEOC, which inevitably got suspended in court and then eventually was ratified in the original executive order. So that is a current real life, our lifetime, our career time in the box thing that has happened. And now we're starting to see the same kind of play, because eventually if the government determines that, hey, listen, this worked with government contractors, it'll leach out into the rest of the world, or at least in the rest of the United States in the private sector.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely. And that's how things start. And so you need to be paying attention to the government contractor thing, even if you're not one. But even if you're not one, we do have this emergency temporary standard coming from OSHA in the near future.
But government contracting is not going to follow the OSHA emergency temporary standard. It has already
they have their own
in the guidance, right? In the guidance that was released, that OSHA's temporary standards does not apply.
Yes. So for you that are not government contractors,
right,
your day is coming.
Yes.
For those of you that are, significantly, the date by which your employees need to be vaccinated is December 8th. And they need to have their first shot, if they're getting Moderna, by October 25th, which is in 4 days, in order to be vaccinated.
Oh, it is 4 days. I was looking at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
The
5
time
days.
above my date is like 2 digits off.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, it's the 23rd. And I look at my love, I'm like, oh no, wait a minute, that's the time. There's the actual date. It's the 21st.
It's the 21st.
My world.
If you get Pfizer, you have an extra week, or Johnson and Johnson, you have 4 more weeks to get vaccinated, because you need to be fully vaccinated by December 8th, which means 2 weeks past your last shot. So while you may say, oh, I have until December 8th to comply, you really have until the 25th to get started. So this is something you need to think about if you're a federal contractor. Now, of course, for those of you that aren't and that are just at businesses with 100 or more employees, this emergency temporary standard is coming. There will be lots of court battles about this. Absolutely, there will be court battles. Like I said, we have some states which have already said you can't require your employees to be vaccinated. So that's going to be a little bit complicated. This will be battled out in the court, how it will go. I'm not willing to guess. You can ask me my guess after the standards come out and see what they say, but we don't have them yet. And of course, if you have fewer than 100 employees, you can still decide you want to mandate vaccines for your employees, as long as you don't live in one of those states which is prohibiting mandating vaccines. So keep that in mind, that this can apply to all sizes of businesses when you're talking about religious exemptions. You can't say, okay, I'm not subject to the federal government because I'm not a federal contractor and I don't have 100 more employees, so I can just ignore religious exemptions. You can't ignore religious exemptions as long as you have 15 or more employees. Then you're subject to that. If you have fewer than 15, you can. But if you, depending on your state, but from a federal level, some states have a lower threshold, but California, and but you need to be aware of this and be prepared, because most likely, if you have any number of employees, you're going to have somebody presenting a religious exemption form to you. And you need to be prepared, and you need to go through, as Brenda said, that interactive process to come up with a solution, hopefully to come up with a solution for where both of you will be happy with it.
And something that you're going to see that is not uncommon, especially when you're really working with your leadership as it pertains to dealing with the religious exemptions. The same thing with medical exemptions. People, when somebody hears the medical card and they don't know what to do, they just kind of like all of a sudden feel very painted into a corner. And it's the same outcome, the same challenges that happen when on the religious side. It's just like they just don't know enough. And then all of a sudden you have managers, you have CEOs, you have leaders. Now they're at risk of saying something that could actually make the situation worse. I've already heard of, I can't say what it is because I don't want to throw conjecture out there because I haven't heard it myself. There's a time to listen to gossip, and there's a time to just keep it in mind when you hear it. And this is a keep it in mind kind of thing. But, you know, I've already heard that within the federal government, there is a division that is coming out and stipulating that they are not going to accept religious exemptions. And you know what? That's opening up a lawsuit. So, but that's over on the government side. So, but that we're just going to park that right over there. They can stay there. We don't have to deal with that. But nonetheless, you really don't want to have a situation to where next thing you know, you've got managers and leaders saying things that are out of whack, out of line. They're saying things under their breath. Here's my favorite one. This one I see a lot. They sometimes are not shy at telling people what they think about the situation. Well, guess what that does to your employees? That bends them totally out of shape, because when somebody says, and you come up to, like I've seen this, when somebody comes up and says, hey, listen, this is what I'm putting in for with the manager, and all of a sudden the manager just starts going off on the situation. So somebody comes up and says, hey, listen, you know, I'm coming to you because I have a sincere religious belief. I am not going to be getting the vaccination. I need to be, you know, I'm requesting a religious exemption. And then you have a manager who doesn't know when to put things through his shut up filter and then comes out and starts saying, well, this is the most dumbest thing I've ever seen. I don't understand why we can't seem to get this together. I don't, the country's not together, blah, 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 blah. And guess what? That employee is now getting bombarded by this barrage of stuff that is coming out. And it's all it is an opinion. But the thing is that this is a scary moment for employees. This is a difficult conversation for employees to have because they know that retaliation exists out there. They know that not everybody thinks alike. And not to mention, at the end of the day, there is this little tiny voice that it's in all of us. And the question is always, oh my God, what are people going to think of me?
And this is true. And I want to circle back a little bit to what you said at the beginning of that, which was a manager then says something stupid. This is also why I want all religious exemption requests to come through HR. And if you don't have on-site HR, to come through one manager and then have them reviewed by your outside counsel or by your senior HR person or whoever you have to do this, because you don't want managers saying dumb things. And here is the truth. Your religious beliefs are your religious beliefs, and there are people that think that your beliefs are dumb. Right. And you may think someone else's are dumb. And I don't care what you think. I care what comes out of your mouth and how you treat people. So you may say, oh my gosh, that is the dumbest belief ever. Just keep that in your little head and send the form on to HR to be dealt with. And you say, thanks so much for letting me know. Here's the form. HR will get back to you. That is the end of the manager's job up until the point where you go through that, where they've had their exemption approved and you go through the interactive process. Managers, of course, should be involved in that interactive process because they know what the employee does from day to day. But your managers should just say, thank you so much for letting me know. Here's the form. Please turn this into HR by this date.
Or another approach would be like, hey, listen, let's get them on the phone right now and figure out what we need to do.
That works too.
Because you also want to make sure that, because managers will make copies of things that they shouldn't have, thinking that they need to keep them as a backup, and you don't want to put them in that position either. Both situations, as long as, look, at the end of the day, as long as you're teaching people what the expectations are of behavior and movement forward, it doesn't matter what approach you take. Just have a clear communicated one-on-one that you guys can follow.
Right.
Yeah, either one works.
And you need to be up to date with your managers and upfront, because they might think that they're saving you a headache by taking care of it themselves. And as one of my employee relations friends likes to say, managers are just walking lawsuits. A lot of them mean well, but they don't know. Yeah. And so just drill into their heads, when someone comes to you, you send them to me and I will take care of it. Yep. And don't say anything negative. I don't care how ridiculous you find their beliefs. It doesn't matter if they say because they don't believe in aliens and this is alien technology or whatever. I don't care. Thank you for letting me know. Please talk to Suzanne, the HR lady, and she will take care of it, you from here. Because we want to make sure everyone is treated fairly. We want to make sure that everyone's request is taken seriously. But we don't want the manager saying, oh, of course, you can have that. No, we need to have people that know what they're doing. And like I've said, and Brenda has said, that's why it's really a good idea to get your employment attorney involved in this, because it'll save you headaches in the long run.
Okay, so we're going to do a quick room reset here real quick. So you guys are tuning in. We are here. You can find Suzanne Lucas, who is known as the Evil HR Lady, at theevilhrlady.org. And you can find me. I am Brenda, the HR lady who has a more difficult last name to say, which is Heck Bottle. And you can find me at Brenda, the HR lady, and hashtag Brenda, the HR lady as well. So we are going to go ahead and invite our Clubhouse guests up to start speaking.